All right, my name is, what is my name? Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal sports bets on Brockpage.com, and I have packages as low as just $1.99. Now, the purpose of these videos is to provide informational sports betting content and also to generate interest in signing up for a membership on my website. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my webpage. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. But what I do on my website is I actually share with you which one of those free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into our part one video. We got a loaded slate for Saturday, ton of games, ton of important games in razor thin lines. So should be some good action here on Saturday. And we're going to go ahead and begin with Boston College taking on Syracuse. And that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off on Saturday, February 19th, 2022. Syracuse is -9 with the total at 147. Now, the Orange do score a whole lot of points in the Carrier Dome. They're averaging 83 points a game in front of their home fans. And they're also drilling 42% of their three-pointers there. And as a matter of fact, Syracuse is currently in the top 5 in the nation in home offensive three-point percentage. Joe Girard is drilling over 43% of his shots from three-land, 13 points a game for the guard. Meanwhile, Buddy Boeheim, he's scoring nearly 20 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. Now, when it comes to shooting the basketball from the field, Syracuse is knocking down 50% of their field goals at home. They're taking on a Boston College team who allows over 72 points a game on the road, and they really struggle guarding the three ball when they travel. As a matter of fact, the Eagles allow their competition to make nearly 40% of their three-pointers against them on the road. Meanwhile, offensively on the other end of the court, BC's been little threat shooting from the field away from home. They're making just 38% of their field goals when traveling. They're also scoring only 62 points a game in that very same category. Now, total-wise, 6 out of BC's last 9 road games did, in fact, get over the posted number. Meanwhile, Syracuse is 8-4 to the over in the Carrier Dome this year. I'm going to lean towards Syracuse -9 and the over 147. Next matchup, Illinois versus Michigan State, 12 o'clock East. Illinois is -1 on the road, totals 141. But despite being the slight favorite on the road here, Illinois actually lost 2 out of their last 3 ball games, and they averaged only 66 points a game during that stretch. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings between these two clubs, the Illini lost 7 out of their last 10 games against Sparty. And speaking of Michigan State, they've actually been really good at the Breslin Center here this year. They're 10-2 straight up on their home court, and they're limiting their competition to just 28% shooting from three-land there. Now, the Spartans are also doing a great job guarding the field goal at home as well. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Gabe Brown is scoring over a dozen points a game along with 4 boards and 91% shooting from the stripe. Meanwhile, Malik Hall, he's drilling over 52% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring double-digit points a game as well. And speaking of three-pointers, the Spartans are currently in the top 20 in the nation in offensive three-point percentage. And when it comes to the total in this one, Michigan State saw overs recently with Indiana, Michigan, and Minnesota. Meanwhile, Illinois saw overs recently with Purdue, Wisconsin, and Maryland themselves. I'm going to lean toward Michigan State +1 and the over 141. Next ball game, it is going to be TCU versus Baylor, 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Baylor is -13, totals 136.5. Now, the Bears are 12-2 straight up in the Farrell Center. Just 58 points a game they're allowing in front of their home crowd. These guys have been playing really, really stingy defense at home. Now, offensively, LJ Cryer's averaging 13.5 points per contest. He's also making 47% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Adam Flagler is making nearly 40% of his three-pointers himself, along with 13 points a game. Now, scoring-wise, the Bears are averaging over 80 points a game on their home court. They're taking on a TCU team who certainly doesn't score much themselves. The Horned Frogs are averaging just 67 points a game on the road. Now, TCU also took the loss in 3 out of their last 4 games. When it comes to the total in this one, 3 out of TCU's last 6 road games fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Baylor saw unders recently with Kansas State, Kansas, and Oklahoma. I'm going to lean toward Baylor minus 13 and the under 136.5 in the tight window. All right, next ball game, it is going to be Xavier versus UConn, 12 o'clock Eastern start time. UConn's minus 5.5, totals 141. Now, the Huskies got the W in 7 out of their last 10 ball games, and they're currently winning 85% of their contests at home. And speaking of home games, well, there's not many teams out there that can rebound offensively better than these guys. The Huskies are currently in the top 10 in the nation in offensive rebounding at home. Adama Sanogo averages over 8.5 rebounds a game, along with 15 points. Meanwhile, Tyrese Martin is drilling nearly 44% of his three-pointers and also scores 14 points a game. Now, the Huskies are averaging 81 points per contest at the Gamble Pavilion. They're taking on a Xavier team who lost 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and they covered the number in only 3 out of their last 10. Now, the Musketeers may have to go to work here Saturday without Nate Johnson. He's currently battling a knee injury, officially listed as questionable. So if you're looking to, fire on this game, you certainly want to pay attention to his status by tip-off. Now, Xavier failed to cover the point spread recently against the likes of St. John's, DePaul, and Butler. When it comes to the number in this one, Xavier saw their last 3 straight get over the line. Meanwhile, UConn went 60% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward UConn minus 5.5 and the over 141. Next ball game should be a good one. Talking about Texas Tech versus the Texas Longhorns, 12:30 p.m. East. The Texas Longhorns are minus 1.5 with the total at 123. Now, the Longhorns allow fewer points per contest at home than any other team in college basketball. The Longhorns are giving up only 50 points a game at the Irwin Center, and they're holding their competition to just 38% shooting from the field there. Now, offensively, Timmy Allen scoring nearly 12 points a game, 6 rebounds, 2 assists for Tim. Meanwhile, Marcus Carr is averaging over 11 points a game himself, along with 2 boards and 3.5 assists. Now, they're taking on a banged-up Texas Tech team who may have to go to work without McCullough, Calhoun, and Allen. All 3 of those guys listed as questionable for Saturday's action. Now, the Red Raiders also lost 5 out of their last 7 on the road. They scored only 61 points a game in those contests. Even worse than that, Texas Tech is making only 23% of their three-pointers when they travel. I believe that it's amongst the worst in college basketball. I think it could possibly be the absolute worst in Division I. Don't quote me on that, but they're in the bottom of the barrel when it comes to shooting the 3 ball on the road. Now, total-wise, Texas Tech is 5-2 to the under away from their home court. Meanwhile, the Longhorns are 11-5 to the under on their home court. I'm going to lean toward Texas minus 1.5 and the under 123. Next matchup, little SEC action. I'm talking about Alabama versus Kentucky, 1 o'clock Eastern start time. Kentucky's minus 9 with a total at 156. Now, Kentucky's amongst the best rebounding teams in the entire country. They're currently in the top 10 in defensive rebounding at home. They also find themselves in the top 15 in the nation in offensive rebounding at any location. Oscar Tshiebwe, he's bringing down over 15 rebounds per contest. He's also scoring 16 points a game. Meanwhile, Kellen Grady scoring over 11.5 points per contest himself. He's also drilling nearly 44% of his 3 balls. And speaking of shooting, Kentucky's making nearly 52% of their field goals at home. They're also scoring over 87 points a game at the Rupp Arena. Now they're taking on a Bama team who's going to have significant problems defensively. The Tide's allowing over 82 points a game on the road, and they've struggled grabbing defensive rebounds. Now total-wise, Bama's 6-1 to the over when traveling this year. No real surprise there with their defensive struggles. They're also 65% to the over for the entire season. Meanwhile, Kentucky, on the other side of things, they saw overs recently with South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky -9 and the over 156. Next game, it is going to be Ole Miss versus Georgia, 1 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Ole Miss is -3 on the road, totals 143.5. But as bad as Georgia's been this year, it's actually the Rebels of Ole Miss who logged just one road victory for the entire season. As a matter of fact, the Rebels have had significant problems scoring with the basketball on the road. They're averaging over 63 points a game, and they're actually having a tough time grabbing defensive boards. Now, they're taking on a Georgia team who did indeed record all 6 of their wins this season at home. I know 6 wins isn't a lot, for the entire year, but all 6 of those victories came on their home court. Now, the Bulldogs are averaging 73 points a game in front of their home fans, and they're led by Kario Okendo, who scores 14 points a game along with 4 rebounds. Meanwhile, Braylon Bridges is scoring 12.5 points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings in this one, Georgia successfully covered the point spread in 8 out of their last 10 contests against Ole Miss. So if you're into historical trends, you certainly want to think about that one there. When it comes to the number in this one, Georgia saw 4 out of their last 6 ball games get over the posted total. Meanwhile, Ole Miss is 4-1 to the over in their last 5. I'm going to lean toward Georgia +3 and the over 143.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Notre Dame versus Wake Forest, and that's going to be a 1 o'clock Eastern start time. Wake Forest is -6, totals 142.5. Now the Deacs are 13-2 straight up at home this year, and they're in the top 10 in the country in shooting from the field. Alondes Williams is making over 53% of his field goals. He's also scoring 20 points a game. Meanwhile, Jake LaRavia is averaging 14 points a game himself. He's also drilling nearly 44% of his three-pointers. And no real surprise here, Wake Forest is scoring over 81 points a game at home. They're taking on a Notre Dame team who struggles a bit offensively on the road. The Irish score only 69 points a game when traveling, and they're also having a tough time grabbing offensive boards away from home. Now, total-wise, Notre Dame 60% to the over when they travel. They also went 7-3 to the over in their last 10 contests against Wake Forest. Meanwhile, the Deacs saw overs recently with Pitt, Syracuse, and Boston College. I'm going to lean toward Wake Forest -6 in the over 142.5. Next contest, it is going to be Auburn versus Florida, 2 p.m. Eastern start time. Auburn's -5.5, totals 141. But as good as Auburn's been on the road, they've actually had a tough time covering the point spread here recently. The Tigers failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 ball games, and they allowed over 77 points a game on average in those 3 failures. Now, Auburn's allowing a bunch of points on the road this season. They're giving up 73 points a game away from their home court. They also lost 7 out of their last 10 meetings with the Gators. So once again, if you're into historical trends, you may want to side with the Gators in this one. And speaking of Florida, they're 11-3 straight up in Gainesville. And they're led by the big man, Colin Castleton, who's averaging 15.5 points a game along with 9 boards. Meanwhile, Flandris Fleming, he's scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with 4 rebounds. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Gators are actually playing terrific defense at the O'Connell Center. Florida allows only 60 points a game in front of their home fans, and they're currently in the top 15 in the nation in defending the 3-ball at home. Now, total-wise, Florida saw overs recently with Oklahoma State, Tennessee, and Mississippi State. Meanwhile, Auburn went 60% to the over in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Florida +5.5 and the over 141. Next ball game, it is going to be Kansas State versus Oklahoma State, 2 o'clock Eastern start time. Oklahoma State's -4.5 with the number at 131. Now, the Cowboys have played really good defensively at home this year. They're allowing only 64 points per contest in their own building. They're also limiting their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field in that same category. Now, scoring-wise, Avery Anderson III is scoring 11 points a game, along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Bryce Thompson scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with a couple of boards. Now, they're taking on a Kansas State team who struggles shooting the basketball on the road. As a matter of fact, the Wildcats are shooting only 38% from the field when they travel. And no real surprise here, Kansas State scores only 65 points a game on the road as well. Now, total-wise, the Cats saw unders recently with Baylor, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State, on the other side of things, saw 8 out of their last 13 at home fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Oklahoma State, -4.5, and the under 131. Next contest, it is going to be Oklahoma versus Iowa State. And that is not on our big screen behind me, but that's going to be a 2 o'clock Eastern start time. Iowa State's -1.5, totals 126. Now, the Cyclones have won a dozen games at home already this year, and they actually play some of the best defense in the Big 12. Matter of fact, the Cyclones are in the top 20 in the country in guarding the three-pointer at home. They're also allowing just 58 points a game at the Hilton Coliseum. Now, scoring-wise, Isaiah Brockington is averaging over 17 points a game, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Tyrese Hunter is scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Now, they're taking on an Oklahoma team who lost 6 of 8 on the road this year, and they actually won only 2 games since January 8th. Not a lot of wins here over, the past, 5 weeks or so. Now, the Sooners are scoring only 67 points a game on the road, and they're making just 30% of their three-pointers in that very same category. When it comes to the total in this one, Oklahoma saw unders recently with Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Meanwhile, Iowa State's officially 10-6 of the under as the official home team. I'm going to lean toward Iowa State -1.5 and the under 126. Next ball game, it is going to be Iowa versus Ohio State, 2:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Ohio State's -3 at home, totals 158. Now, the Buckeyes are perfect, 11-0 straight up in Columbus, and they're in the top 5 in the nation in home defensive boards. E.J. Liddell's grabbing over 7.5 rebounds a game for Ohio State. The forwards also scoring nearly 20 points a game, along with a couple assists. Meanwhile, Malachi Branham, he's shooting nearly 46% from three-land. He's also scoring double-digit points a game. This guy has been dangerous from downtown. And speaking of shooting the shooting the basketball in general, Ohio State's making 40% of their three-pointers at home, and they also rank in the top 15 in the country in home offensive field goal percentage. Now, they're taking on an Iowa team who lost 5 of 8 on the road this season. And simply put, they allow way too many points defensively. Matter of fact, the Hawkeyes are giving up 76 points a game on the road, and they're actually having a difficult time grabbing defensive boards. Now, total-wise, Iowa did see unders recently with Minnesota, Penn State, and Rutgers. Meanwhile, Ohio State saw their last 3 straight all fall under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Ohio State -3. And the under 158. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final contest for part 1. It is going to be Clemson versus Louisville, and that's going to be a 3 o'clock Eastern start time. Clemson's -1 on the road, totals 139. But despite being the slight favorite on the road here, Clemson actually lost 7 out of their last 9 away from home. And they're also giving up 71 points a game in their travels. Now, they're taking on a Louisville team who really doesn't win a whole lot of games themselves, but they do keep their opponents away from the basket. The Cards are allowing only 68 points a game in the KFC Yum Center, and they're also limiting them to just 32% shooting from 3 land in that same category. Now, when it comes to offensive production in this one, Malik Williams is averaging 8 rebounds a game, and he's also scoring just about double digits. Meanwhile, Noah Locke is averaging almost 10 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards as well. And when it comes to head-to-head meetings here between these two clubs, the Cards held Clemson to just 63 points a game in their last 9 contests against each other. Now, when it comes to scoring in this one, Louisville saw overs recently with Syracuse and North Carolina. They're also 5-4 to the over in their last 9 contests against Clemson. Meanwhile, the Tigers, on the other side of things, they saw, sorry, brain fart. I'm going to lean toward Louisville +1 and the over 139. All right, and with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you're going to get access to those picks all the way through the end of February. Although I do tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single pick that I give out on that website, you're going to want to sign up for my board member tier package. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Friday to you, or Saturday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.